I go back to my grandmother, give experience to people and emotion. If you're able to do that through your restaurants or even on the table at home, you become addicted, and I love it. And I've been loving it for 34 years.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Italian cuisine has such a huge influence on not just the food we eat every day in Australia, but the makeup of the hospitality sector too. But it's unfair to characterise food as just Italian, as techniques and ingredients are so different across the 20 regions. How different is the food of the north to the south? Alessandro Pavoni is the director and chef of Ormeggio at the Spit, Chiosco by Ormeggio, and Amare. Alessandro, how are you?
Very good, thank you very much.
It's great to have you on the show. You've had an incredible influence in Australia since you've been here. You're from northern Italy. How different is the food across Italy?
So, you have to think that Italy until 200 years ago was 20 different countries with different languages and driven by different influences. So, for example, Northeast influenced by German and Austria, and Northwest France and Switzerland, Sardinia from Spanish influence, Sicily from Northern Africa, Moroccan influence, Puglia from Greek influence, and also we influence other cuisine, like the Venice Kingdom influenced the whole Greek cuisine, and then it came back down in Puglia. And languages, cuisine, and also the terroir make such a different terroir between, obviously, for example, my region, say the northern Italy start from the Alps, which you can think, if there is high pasture, 2,000-3,000 meters above sea level, where the cow, eat this fresh grass, and you have in summer, and you have amazing aromatic cheeses, butter, cream. So heavier food, driven by those ingredients. Then you come down a little, and in a matter of 45 minutes, 1 hour, you are on the lakes and the plain of the northern Italy. And the lakes create this microclimate a lot more Mediterranean. So although the southern, the food become a lot lighter, cleaner. There is a lot of extra virgin olive oil, lemons, capers, like in the Mediterranean basin. And so that's the part which is driven by the terroirs. And also the influence. If you go, for example, in Val d'Aosta, we have a Valdostana, Cotoletta Valdostana, which is basically a cordon bleu. In Sardinia, you have a lot of Catalonian dishes like Ragosta alla Catalana, or even the pecorino may come from Manchego, is a gray area there. And then Sicily, the influence of Moroccan cuisine, the granita come maybe from Moroccan to then Sicily, then the gelato, and become gelato from there. Couscous in Sicily, very, very traditional dish, which is obviously Northern African.
You were born in Brescia up in the north. Tell us about food for you with your family growing up.
So my mom so we are in the pre-Alps, on the Alps of Italy. My mom comes from a little village that now count only 20 people living there, and is about 1,500 meters above sea level, and is driven by this hunting and high mountain cow farming. So, as I said before, butter, heavy cheeses, quite a heavy type of food, which I love. And but I grew up, I went to cooking school on Lake Garda, which is, as I said before, maybe 45 minutes from there. And it's totally different cuisine. So I was exposed to both sides of the medal there. And yeah, it's very interesting because you keep changing flavor in a daily basis. It depends where you are.
What led to a career in hospitality for you?
It's a cliche, but it's actually my grandmother. I remember my great-grandmother, actually, which is the mother of my father. She was from Mantova, which is a very famous town for tortelli di zucca, pumpkin tortelli. And she was making that dish once a month for the family. And it was days of work because she was talking to the vegetable supplier to get the best pumpkin from her area, which is 1 hour from where we grow up. So, and then age the pumpkin for a few days, do the puree, hang it for overnight for the filling, get the amaretti and then in the morning, like about 7 o'clock, all the kids were helping her to doing these tortelloni on the table in the kitchen. I never forget. And then when the meal happened, I always have that feeling, and she was making everybody happy. She was giving emotion to people through her cooking. And I thought, one day I want to be able to do that. It's a kind of art, because it would be like if you can play an instrument and you transporting people to emotional moments. And I thought, and I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to make people smile of happiness when they eat what I cook. It could be a home from my family, and I decided to do it professionally because I thought, then when you start to have that feedback, it becomes addictive. That's why I decided at the age of 12, I want to be a cook. And I went to school at 15. And now 33 years later, I'm still doing it.
Who were some of the main influences when you were in your career, when you were in Brescia, that had a real impact on you once you started working as a chef?
So Brescia is a very lucky town because it's always been an area where a lot of very good restaurants, Michelin restaurants. Some points was the most star Michelin restaurant concentration was right there. Actually, now the Lake Garda is one of the most concentrated Michelin star restaurant area in Italy, only on the lake. So it's amazing for the quality. And obviously, I went to school and I find this teacher, which then he also owned a restaurant and became my mentor and chef called Giuseppe Maffioli, which is associated with Eugenio Massari, one of the greatest pastry chefs ever lived in Italy, and is still alive, obviously. And I worked with them in the beginning of my career. At 15, I go to school, and then summer holiday and weekends we work. And then I start going, I ask them to send me to the best people. So they sent me to Gualtiero Marchesi, which was the maestro of the Italian cuisine, the first to have the 3 Michelin star, and the one that exposed the modern Italian cuisine to the world back then. So I was very fortunate to work there, and in a few other restaurants at that level. And then back then, to learn the best technique in the world, you would have to. It was a must to go in France. You gotta go in France. Otherwise, the best cuisine, Italian cuisine, but you gotta learn the technique in France. That was the. So I went in Lyon and worked in a restaurant where Paul Bocuse was involved as well. So I did a stint in Paul Bocuse, and then on the Lyon Vert restaurant La Rotonde was a 2 Michelin restaurant in Lyon, and that was literally the next level of cuisine. And I spent a year there learning techniques. Then I came back in Italy. I went in Sardinia, Cala di Volpe hotels, a few places. And then at 28 years old, I came in Australia to learn English. And I'm still learning English.
Tell us about that decision. Why did you come to Australia, and what was the draw for you?
I don't look. I just literally look. I'm gonna go maybe 1 month. I don't want to go in England, too cold. I didn't want to go in America because usually I didn't like Americans. It's just as I feel, but it's not. I didn't know any Americans, so it was just what I thought back then. So my cousin came back from Australia holiday and told me that was amazing. So I came here, and then after a few weeks, I decided I want to stay. So I start working here and there in a daily basis. And in one of the restaurants I used to work, I found my wife, Anna. She was working in the front of house. So everything started from there. I was in love, and I had to learn English.
You ended up as the executive chef at the Park Hyatt. How different was that kitchen and cooking in Australia compared to your experience abroad?
Look, the Hyatt for me wasn't a school of learning how to cook. I think I came in Australia with a very good pedigree, and I knew what I wanted to cook. But the Hyatt was an unbelievable experience to learn how to manage, like numbers and different events, and how to actually run a business, which is, as chefs, sometimes with our big ego, we forget that we're running a business. And that's why most of the time restaurants go broke as well. So that was probably, it depends how the way that you look at, but it's sometimes it's more important to know how to run the restaurant as a business side, and that they teach me that, they teach me that, and I put all my effort in the food, and I learn a lot, and we grow the restaurant. It was a great restaurant. I had the opportunity also to go all over the world to do promotion, all over India, Japan, South America. I helped them to do some openings. So it was a huge growth for me. And then they offered me a job in Hong Kong, in Hong Kong. And I refused, because I thought I was very good. And I took the opportunity to open a restaurant at the Speed, which everybody thought I was mad. But the restaurant is still there after 12 years, so that wasn't a bad choice.
It's become one of Australia's best Italian offerings. It's an incredible restaurant that you've built there with your wife, Anna. Tell us about the beginnings of that and creating. What were the challenges to create Ormeggio?
To be honest, the biggest challenge was that I had an heart attack 2 months before I opened it. So I opened a restaurant and I was still recovering, doing hard recovery. And after 9 months, I opened the restaurant. After 9 months, I had another heart attack with a double bypass. And I had to keep, but I couldn't give up, really. I was very fortunate to have, I always been circumvented by amazing people, which are some of my best friends, chefs and front of house people, and I believe whatever I build as a brand is not me, but it's us. It's the democracy. And I was very lucky to have these people that actually, in those times that I was absent, also they keep growing the restaurant, and together we work on the concepts, on the dishes. And I had the concept and the dishes before I opened Ormeggio in my mind, and I opened it like that, and then we developed together with the team. Obviously, after the second heart attack, I was out for a few weeks, And then I was in the kitchen, but I was sitting on a chair most of the time. But it went well. So good.
What sort of impact did having sort of the 2 heart attacks and the double bypass, did that change your perspective on life and your career?
Look, no, because that was only the end of the story, because I deal with bigger thing than heart attacks, with the deadly cancer in the lungs and in the bone when I was young, like 19 years old and 24 years old again. That's why I had a heart attack. So look, I just look in front, and I never look back. I just keep moving forward and up. That's it. And that I learned that when I was 20, and I keep doing it, whatever happened.
Tell us about Ormeggio and what you sort of, it's evolved and changed quite a lot over the last decade or so, but tell us about, your visions of it originally and what you were presenting to the market and sort of what it's become.
So in the beginning, it was more like a traditional trattoria. And then we slowly made it like more like a modern Italian restaurant. And then it becomes slow. And then I did every 2 or 3 years, I get bored very quickly. So we do renovation, change the concept, and do more like a degustation style restaurant. Then just before COVID, I was tired of that. And I think, the market is changing from that style of dining. So I decided to do another concept again, which was more like a sharing seafood oriented, always with the Italian, obviously, always Italian cuisine, but in this case more like a sharing, also still creative, but more like a sharing seafood, casual fine dining, I'll call it. And then I ripped off all the furniture and make it again in different colors, different, more brighter. And I like changes, I like to keep evolving, keep moving forward, change things. And every time it's been successful. But this time is the most successful. And even if COVID was there, I actually took an advantage, because the first lockdown of COVID, one of my friends was stuck here from Venice, and he's a painter. He paints the stucco, all that stuff. So I told him, look, you're gonna stay in the house and I feed you, but you're gonna renovate the rest. And then my friend built there as well. So we ripped it off and did it new again.
Tell us a bit about Chiosco, which is just next door to Ormeggio, and the offering that you have there.
So because Ormeggio is more like a fine dining venue, and we have a lot of locals around the area there. So we felt that there was a demand for a more casual, barefoot friendly, take your dog and your kids trattoria by the water, like it would be in Italy, in anywhere by the water in Venice or Portofino, and bring your own wine, relax, cheap and cheerful. And also because I really wanted to have that type of dining, to have lunch for myself. And so we have people coming 2-3 times a week, taking their own bottle there, with the pajamas on sometimes. And then they come once a month at Ormeggio when they celebrate. And it's very busy. They're both very busy. Ormeggio Chiosco is amazing. Very, very good. So yeah, we hit the two often. People love it. It works.
It's been pretty challenging the last couple of years, but at the end of 2020, you opened a huge new restaurant in the Crown, Sydney, Amare. Tell us a bit about that, the restaurant and what you created there.
Amare is all about the old school service tableside service. There is traditional Italian cuisine done right, and the concept of a restaurant go around what we do at the table, the theater of the service. The idea I have for many years was to bring back that theater, because I feel like the food is it's going very far. The dishes, the molecular gastronomy here and there, tweezer perfection, and I think, where are we gonna go with that? So I thought, let's go back with the food on the tradition, and let's move forward with the service. In Australia, we need to have a better school as restaurant for front of house people. We need to teach them. We need to make it a profession. And in order to do that, we need to excite people about it. More restaurants should do that, and so that people they want to do that as a career, not as a 30-hour a week to pay uni. And I wanted to bring the theater that I remember when I used to go with my parents as a teenager on those Belle Epoque villas, restaurants on the water on the Lake Garda. You had those people with the white uniform opening the door when you are of the car, when you are there, and then they do all this thing, even a Geridon service. And I was thinking, let's bring that back, give it the theater table side to the people, because you want to go to a restaurant to have that, to see a theater, to have an experience, to have to have the show. It has to be a show. We need to do more show. And in fact, the people loving it.
Italy's influence on Australia's culinary landscape is quite incredible. But how do you see it compared to the food back in Italy?
There is a very, very good restaurant now in Sydney and Melbourne in Italian cuisine. I have to admit that when I came here 20 years ago, it was terrifying. There's only 3 restaurants, and the rest was disgraceful. Now there is very good Italian, lots of time better than Italy, because you could have a very bad experience if you go in Italy, and I've been the last few years. If you go in Venice as a tourist, you can eat very badly. You go in Florence or even Milan and Rome, in the wrong places, you gotta know where you're going. And Italy, pretty much the Italian restaurant, most of them are good. They're like, it's good. It's getting better, and there is a good vibe about that in Australia, and I'm very happy and proud of it, because compared to 20 years ago, we had big changes. A lot of chefs want to do more Italian, and they do it well, even not Italian chefs.
You're incredibly busy with 3 very successful restaurants. How do you manage the success of those restaurants and sort of a life-work balance? Okay.
As I said before, I'm very fortunate to have an amazing bunch of people that work. We work together in all the restaurants, and they passion and they love for this job, the hospitality. It's amazing, and I'm only very lucky to be at the helm of these teams. And having that, I can spread my time between the restaurant and also have time for my hobbies and my family. Yeah. So I'm looking after myself as a lifestyle, and I look after my restaurant. I'm at the restaurants as much as I can, but also when I'm not there, things are same, if not better.
You're also an ambassador for Heart Research Australia. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, look, our Research Australia, obviously they saved my life because they research enable them to have machinery in the ambulance that can detect what type of problem you have on your heart, for example, and send you to the right hospital. Because the second time when I had the biggest heart attack, I had 2 or 3 hours to live, and they were able to do this exam and send me straight to the right place, and they're already waiting for me in the theater. And that's because our Research Australia researcher have that invented these technologies, right? So I experienced firsthand. So most of my charity, I do for them, with them.
Your influence in Australia has been absolutely incredible. What do you love about what you do?
I go back to my grandmother, give experience to people and emotion. If you're able to do that through your restaurants or even on the table at home, you become addicted, and I love it. And I've been loving it for 34 years.
Well, it's an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today, Alessandro, just to hear a little bit of your story. Congratulations on what you've built, and look forward to seeing more of it as well.
Thank you very much. Great to be on your show. Thanks to having me.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.